Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today I have Javon Williams on the show, and she's going to talk about her foundation, the Lamont Myers Foundation. Get you something to drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Good morning, Javon. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I stayed up late last night again. I always stay up late on the weekends because I like being watching my shows. I got up about, I think I went to bed maybe about 11, got
Mm.
up about 1, started binge watching my show to about 6,
Yeah,
really got another hour sleep, got back. So yeah, so that's how my weekend be.
yeah. Mine's just like that during the week. When you saving lives and businesses, we don't get no sleep. Our life is not the same.
That's right. That's right. Well, Javon, let's start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and then we'll just go from there.
Yes, of course, yes. Well, as you know, I'm Javon Williams, and I'm the CEO of Lamont Myers Foundation. And what my foundation do is we bring awareness and education to the communities. We travel to San Francisco. We had to Stockton, all over. I have these second chance kits. They're opiate kits, and I get those out to the communities for free. What's incorporated in my kits are Narcan, hand sanitizer, gloves, masks, and fentanyl test strips. So my organization was based off of my son, my beloved son, Lamont Myers, who passed away from a fentanyl poisoning. And we just want to do what we can do for our communities. You
Okay.
know,
Thank
yeah.
you for that. Javon, were you born and raised here in the Sacramento area?
No, I'm actually from San Francisco. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have no siblings. I have a stepbrother and a stepsister.
Oh, really? So you was like the only child by your
The,
mom?
the only child, mom and dad.
Really?
Yes, yes.
What was that like?
Oh my, well, you know what? I have a whole bunch of family, like a whole bunch of girl cousins. So we're really close. So it was like, I was really not too much alone, but the times I was or being around them, I'll be like, I want a brother or sister. I
Yeah,
went through that and I got used to it and and yeah, yeah, yeah.
interesting. I have a friend in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
Um, she is the only child. She has no siblings. And she always used to tell me that she wished she had a brother or a sister. I
Yeah.
have several siblings, and
Uh-huh.
I was telling her, I said, it's a little different when you have a sibling because, sometimes you guys get along, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see your sibling talking back to one of your parents and things like that. Sometimes you got to step up and say, "Hey, calm down." I mean, I told her the dynamics are different, but
Yeah.
she's always wanted a sibling. She always just tell me that she felt alone and
Oh,
just to watch, now
yeah,
she got a huge family, a lot of girl cousins
yeah,
and stuff, but she's always wanted a sibling. That's interesting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah, I ain't gonna say I didn't. I wanted my siblings, but I got used to it.
Yeah, yeah,
And on the weekends, we would get together. I would spend all at their house, or me and my cousin, we went to the same school, elementary
yeah.
school, middle school. So some nights I was at her house. but it's nothing like having your own. And
Yeah.
so that's why when I got older, I knew I was going to have more than one kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Smart. So what
Yeah.
brought you to Sacramento, Javon?
The I wanted to have a house, and
Okay.
out in San Francisco, it was just it's cost too much,
Yeah.
to be staying out there and have to pay. I could never afford it. So
Yeah.
I moved up here to this beautiful city in Sacramento, which I love and adore. I've been up here for over 25 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love it. I still feel like I'm on vacation, but just have to work.
Yeah. Nice.
hmm
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, you said that you knew you was gonna have more than one child. So talk a little bit about your children and how many children do you have?
Yeah, so I had three boys, two here on this earth,
Mhm.
and my oldest is 27 years old, and he's doing really well for himself. I miss him to death. Last month I had a birthday. I turned 50,
Okay.
and he came out here a couple of times and came and saw me. My youngest, he's 17 years old,
Okay.
and my middle child, Lamont, bless his soul, he's no longer with us, but he's with
Yeah.
the Lord Savior,
Yeah.
and on earth he would be 24.
Okay. 24. Okay.
hmm
So when you raised your kids, did you raise them? Were they close like growing up?
Yeah, yeah, they were
Right.
close. Yeah, they were like spread apart. Like LJ and Lamont, my youngest and middle, Lamont's the middle. They're like 7 years, and then Elton and Lamont is like 5. But everybody was the baby at one point.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's true. I never
hmm
thought of it like that. Everybody definitely was the baby at one point, for sure. Yeah, spark my interest with that one. So let's get in. Just talking a little bit about Lamont. Like, what
Yeah.
was he like as a child growing up? What type of person was he?
Oh my gosh. When I look back at what I'm going through, I mean, he was an angel.
Yeah.
You know, I remember, I'll get into that, but I almost lost Lamont when he was about 3. He was very, very articulate, very articulate. I thought that, he needed like special services in school, because like his handwriting would be real light and he would move a little slow, and I got him examined, and lady said, no, he's actually smart.
Yeah.
you
Wow.
know, and in high school, Lamont was the type of kid to whereas he can just scan some pages and already know.
Wow.
He was very smart, very good in math. Just he wanted to be a mechanic engineer. He went to City College for that. Just very smart. He knew how to fix things.
Wow.
I was told like one of his friends' parents when I met her, she told me that she would have her son call Lamont and ask him how to fix things around the house. Might
Wow.
be a TV or something on a computer, stuff like that. And her son, he would show her son how to do it, or if
Yeah.
if he couldn't get it, he would just come over. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, he was just so smart. Yeah, it
Wow.
would be things I would ask him, and he'd be like, I don't know, mom, I don't want to get into that. Like, say, if me and his sister was getting into it, well, what do you think about this? He
Yeah.
knew his place, very obedient, just a smart guy, very
Yeah.
intelligent, smart.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about having multiple children is you get to see them develop their own individual personality. That
Yes.
has always fascinated me for some reason. For people who have multiple kids, I often
Yeah.
ask them questions and things like, "Well, when they was this age, when did you see them kind of growing into their own?" Because some children are strong-willed, some children
Yeah.
are more compassionate, some children are more like a go-getter,
Yeah.
and it just fascinates me as the kids grow up. They kind of
Mold
develop
into
into
it.
yeah. Was it like
Mhm.
that with your three sons?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, based upon that, I always raised them to be independent.
Nice.
because I knew that they had it. Of course, I was like the mama bear, oh, my baby, and spoiled,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But, it was just something about each and every one of my kids.
Yeah.
Like, for example, my youngest, who is now 17, that boy was walking before he was talking. You know, I
Wow.
kid you not. Lamont
Wow.
was very special, very articulate. My
Wow.
older son, he was really good as well with academics. It was just
Wow.
something special. Hmm.
Yeah. That is interesting to me. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Lamont was born and raised here in Sacramento.
Lamont was born in Redwood City in the Bay Area.
Oh,
We moved here when he turned like about 2. He was about 2 when we moved here. Yeah,
okay. Okay.
yeah.
And when you guys moved to him, he did seem like he got used to or acclimated to like a different atmosphere, a different change and things like that.
Yeah, he adjusted real well. Yeah,
Okay.
he loved Sacramento. He loved his hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My youngest is the one that was born here in Sacramento.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did Lamont have a lot of friends growing up and things like that? Like, was he like outgoing and
Yeah, he was very outgoing. In fact, there was things that I heard, like from like middle school, he would be like bullied,
yeah,
people would bully him in high school, a little bit of high school, and
yeah,
I think he got to the point to whereas he stopped caring. And when I say he stopped caring about what people thought of him.
right. Hmm.
Yeah, and he was just like, I'm gonna do my own thing, And at
Yeah,
the same time, he wanted to make people happy. He got a lot of me, a lot
yeah,
of my heart in him, let him, people to be happy
yeah,
and be helpful and so compassionate. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So let's talk about what led up to that moment of suicide. Do you remember like what happened like during that week? What was going on during that week? And if you don't mind,
Yeah,
sharing that.
yeah, oh yeah. You can ask me anything. I'm an open book.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll bring it back just a little bit further. There was things that I would see, but I didn't know. I was so busy with working. I think at that time, one time I was driving Uber, trying to make extra money,
Yeah,
whatever I can do for my kids,
yeah,
so we can have extra. And then like I say, I always raised them to be independent. So I've
right,
seen some of the signs, but I didn't really know.
right,
And that's why I tell people don't second guess yourself. If that's
right,
what you see, that's what it is.
right.
You got to pay attention to those. You got to pay attention to that. Because it always tell you some kind of way in your soul, when you feel in your soul, that's when you know
Yeah,
but I didn't know that at the time. You know what I mean? I didn't have nobody to tell me these type of things.
yeah,
So there was some things that, for example, like his grades was slipping a little bit, and I'll be like, what's going on? And then, he'll be like mad all the time, and we'll be getting into it. And I
yeah,
just thought like, okay, let me back up a little bit. Maybe I'm being overbearing,
yeah,
maybe I'm being too controlling, those
yeah,
are the things I think about. So there was definitely signs there,
yeah,
you know, and those couple days, I remember him coming in the house, it was, man, I wish I can just take those days back as I'm just
yeah,
like up here talking to you. And it was peaceful.
yeah,
I remember I had asked him to come with me to go drop his grandmother off because he would help me take care of his grandma. So he got in the car with us and he sat in the back seat with her and my youngest son, and we took her home and he was quiet or whatever. Then I think 2 days after that he came in the house, and my Lamont was 9 pounds. He was my biggest baby.
oh
My biggest
wow,
baby, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, so he came in the house, and I asked him, I don't know if I should stop here or if you have more
No,
to
go,
go.
go,
Oh,
go, please. I want to hear it all.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah. And so, yeah, I asked him, I said, Lamont, what happened to your car? And, he did, and, looked down and he looked at me and he was like, oh, I was tired. I was tired. I was driving and I was tired and I crashed into a fence.
yeah,
And I looked at him and I said, Lamont, what are you thinking? You could have killed yourself. He would
right,
just do little things. And I said, these are signs. These are
yeah,
signs from God. And I'll never forget. That was pretty much my last time telling him that these are signs from God. And he gave me
yeah,
this stare in my eye, like about maybe 25, 30 seconds. You
yeah,
know. So now that this have happened, I wonder, like, did he feel something? Did he know something? Did he
yeah,
dream something? Just I'll never forget that look in his face.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But before that, it would just be little things, like he'd come in the house, didn't close the garage, or I come
Hmm.
home, he not here the garage. Just little things, and
Hmm.
us women, we get irritated. Anybody would get irritated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
I have I'm gonna say an ex-friend, somebody I would used to be really close to,
Hmm.
and he was addicted to like pain pills, like Norco,
Yeah.
Vicodins, and things like that. I
Hmm.
mean, in a major way.
Hmm.
And he used to, just do things that was out of the ordinary, or
Yeah.
things that brought his family's attention to him,
Hmm.
like leave he'll be cooking something and
Yeah.
leave it on the stove, or
Yeah.
leave the water running, or just
Yeah.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
his family started to like, well, what's going on, like what's
Yeah.
going on. And at first they didn't really pay attention and stuff like that, but there was so many of them,
Yeah.
that you know he came clean later,
Yeah.
that he was addicted and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But you're 100% correct. All of
Yeah.
those little things are definitely signs,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
sometimes we as loved ones, we miss it because we don't,
Yeah.
the our maybe whether it's our son, cousin,
Yeah.
whoever, auntie that's struggling, they
Yeah.
have a way of throwing us off their track.
Yes. 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 They real
Yeah.
sneaky with it. Yeah.
Yeah, they got well thrown us off
Hmm.
their track, like, oh, like,
Hmm.
and like you said, like trying to, they would make you feel like you're overbearing or you're
Yes.
controlling, and
Hmm.
that's a part of their
Yeah.
manipulation tactic.
Hmm.
They continue
Yes.
to do what
Yes.
they're trying to do. So
Yeah, it was manipulated, and especially is hard because, like, like I'm from the streets, okay? I'm
yeah,
born and raised in San
yeah,
Francisco. I done been around drugs my whole life.
yeah,
You know what I'm
mm,
saying? So, you think but I didn't know.
yeah,
I mean, I'm not, I suspect that he would smoke weed. I used to smell his clothes and stuff like
yeah,
that. And I didn't smell anything.
yeah,
So, but I didn't think, like, the pills.
right,
And the pills was like back in my mama days. She like
yeah,
almost 70,
yeah,
history repeat itself.
right,
But and then again too, I was so busy. I don't want to speak that religion right now, but
yeah, yeah,
the devil is a lie. That's all I'm
yeah,
gonna say. I don't know if that's appropriate, but the devil is a lie. So
yeah,
it was a lot of that misconception, and I didn't know I was so busy just trying to just take care of the household, and like,
yeah.
oh, you got it, you okay? And then, oh, you would grow out of it. And I had just started my job too, so I'm trying to focus on that and make some money on the side.
Yeah, yeah, take care of your family. I get it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So what were you doing the day that you got the call?
Yeah.
Like, or what happened that
Yeah.
morning,
Yeah.
that led up to that moment? I'm just trying to piece it.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. So my 17-year-old, who was 12 at the time, like I said, I raised the kids to be independent. So I'm like, schedule you a haircut appointment.
Yeah.
So he did that, and so he swore up and down that he had an appointment at 8 o'clock. And I'm thinking, like, what barber is open at 8 o'clock
Yeah.
sharp, you know? So I'm like, okay, I'm letting you take the lead. So I get out, so I walk out the house, and I see Lamont car, and I was so happy to see his car. It's just like if anybody got kids and you and your kid getting into it or whatever, and you
Yeah.
worry about them a lot. We worry about our kids, our mom, whatever, a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was so happy to see his car. And so I was like, okay, he's home, because he was sleeping in his car sometimes because he didn't want to bother me. And I had strict rules that you're not gonna be coming in and out of my house, and you're
Yeah.
definitely not gonna come in here all time of the night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try to teach them some type of routine, or whatever. So we get in the car and we leave, and then, of course, he didn't have a haircut appointment. And then we come back, and I'm like, okay, no, first of all, no, let me back up. So we get in the car, and I told my son, I said, go tell Lamont to get in the house because this is in February
Yeah.
2020. February 2020. It's cold. So he goes to Lamont car, and he's knocking and he's banging at his car. No answer. So he come back, and I'm like, okay, well, we about to be late for this haircut appointment. So I drive off. Of course, no haircut appointment. Then I come back home, because I was celebrating my birthday. A lot of people don't know, might know, but me and Lamont birthdays are 5 days apart.
Yeah.
So I was getting ready to celebrate my 45th birthday, and I wanted to have it in the city, with some of my friends I haven't seen in years.
Yeah.
So, so he comes back to the car, like, Mom, no answer. I'm like, okay. And then I had to go make a run or whatever. And then I come back, and as I'm leaving, about to leave again, I tell him to go knock and bang on the door, and there's nothing. And so, we about to leave finally. And he goes, Mom, we can't leave. What if he's dead? And, I don't, to this day, I don't know if that's God didn't want Lamont didn't want me to see him like that, but for
Yeah.
somebody to say that, you would like get out the car and go
Right.
see, and I just remember hearing them knocking and banging. I had this problem with my feet. I have a bad Achilles. So it
Yeah.
was hurting really bad. I was in pain. I'm always in pain, but I was in pain with my Achilles. So I was just like, whatever. So when he said that, I said, boy, I said, ain't nothing wrong with him. He good, and I
Yeah.
drove off.
Yeah.
And I drove off, went to the Bay Area to meet my husband, and I'm out there all day. I get back to Dixon to my stepdaughter house at the time, and she wanted me to come see her house because she know how I am. I'm a clean freak. So I
Yeah.
stop over there, go meet them at the park. Boom, we're going back to her house. She get out the car, open the door. As I'm about to get out the car, I get this phone call, and that really changed my life for the rest of my life. I get this
Yeah.
call, and the lady said, "May I speak to Javon Williams?" And I'm thinking, like, because my mind is always going, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
always going. So I'm thinking, like, wait, he not at school or whatever. And I'm thinking she about to say he in jail because just weird things. Everything was just moving so fast.
Right.
And she said Lamont, he passed away at 3:07 p.m. And I said, what? And all I remember is just falling to the floor, hitting that concrete, crying.
Yeah.
But as I was crying, it was like I knew it was something, you know. And I don't really talk about this publicly, but I did have a dream a year before that one of my kids were gonna pass. And so I don't know if that was warning or whatever, but yeah, and it just changed my life tremendously. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
to even do
Um,
that.
you know, when you at the moment when you got the call and stuff and things like that, where obviously you had to go and identify the body and things like that, right?
Right, I didn't have to. They wouldn't let me. And I
Oh,
remember telling her when I was on the phone, I was like, please don't move his body, because all I wanted to do was just, I wanted to hold my baby.
Yeah.
I knew, boom, that was gonna be the last time. I wanted to
Yeah.
be there for him. When somebody that you close to, you want to be there every step of the way. And
Yeah.
I knew he was gone, but I wanted to be there. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to see him. And
Yeah.
they wouldn't let me, and they kept telling me, "Oh, you got to go through the not the corners, the funeral home." And I'm like, no, no. What else way? You tell this to everybody. This is your procedure.
Yeah.
I work for the state. You tell everybody all this. What can I do to see my son? And it was no way. And she was like, we wouldn't even want you to see him like that. And I was just like, well, that's not your decision.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of back and forth. And I I wish I still was able to see my son.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people can't take that. But I haven't did in a while, but sometimes I still look at him in his coffin, the picture,
Yeah.
and that's why I ask people that know him, if you know, just tell me the memories, because I got to go through this for life. You know, I want to be able to feel it. I want to be able to feel everything. I want to know what he did that was funny, what he did that wasn't funny.
Mhm.
It's like reading a book or a tape player. I want to have that connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, at some point, when you're going through that, that's where your mind trigger off to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when so what was the cause of his passing, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So, when I talked to the lady, the coroner's lady, I asked her, I said, what happened? And she said that Lamont friend had been calling him and he hadn't picked up. And so he decided to come around and see how he was doing, because they were celebrating his birthday the
Mhm.
night before. So some kind of way, sometime that morning, they dropped him off in his car. And it's just so many missing parts of that I don't understand, that I don't know. Like, for example, I hope I'm not going too far, but yeah, I didn't understand. Like, I picture like Lamont was driving in his car with you guys. So how did he get in the back seat? You know what I'm saying? And when I looked at his car, because when this just happened, nobody was there for me. Everybody was gone, the neighbors. I was just sitting outside. I didn't want to go in the house, so I was waiting for my husband to drive from San Francisco to Sacramento. I didn't get back to my inside my house until he came home. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at his car, and just trying to process everything. And I'm like, but his car is parked perfectly. you know so something told me, like, Lamont didn't drive that car home. you know so the next day had my son call one of his friends, and he said that he drove him home. And the story was that Lamont was getting tired, and it was getting late, and they decided to drive him home. So that's what I'm heard. And then I heard something about that, when it started or whatever, something about that. The first story was that Lamont had they had he had put some weed in a blunt and took half of a pill. And is this appropriate for me to
Yes,
oh,
100%. Yeah.
oh,
But
okay,
we're gonna have about 3 more minutes before we close out and come back in, just so you know. So I'll let you know. But this is
okay.
definitely appropriate. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so he put the weed in the blunt and took half of the pill and put it in there.
Okay.
And they all smoked the blunt, and he
Mhm.
took the other half of the pill. So during that time, I didn't understand, like, well, why didn't something happen to somebody else? God forbid
Right.
anybody, it happened to anybody. But
Right.
why wasn't my son and somebody else, or so
Right. I
that
get
was the
that.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
100%. Not that you wanted that
Yeah.
tragic to happen to somebody else, but you're like, okay, why was he the only one being
Yeah.
affected by what you
hmm
guys did?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I didn't understand that. And then a couple of years after that, I found out that, he had put in a water bottle. Now that makes perfect sense to me.
Mhm.
Which we as I do more research, it's like a cookie.
Yeah.
Fentanyl, it's like a cookie. The cookie effect. One half you get a little bit, the other one. So I kind of understand just a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Okay.
understand more. Like, okay, my son put the pill in the water bottle, and I couldn't understand that when I had a birthday party. I celebrate his birthday every year. That one of the boys, I asked him. I said, "Can you please tell me what happened to my son? I don't sleep well. I don't hate anybody.
Right.
I didn't have it in my heart. I don't know what it was, cause woo woo,
Yeah.
that's a tough thing to say. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
But I didn't hate anybody. I just wanted to know the truth,
yeah,
about my child.
yeah,
And he said that, he would come back and talk to me. And he said, but Lamont loved his family. And he said, just know that when Lamont took something, he always put in something. Like, I
yeah,
didn't understand what he meant. So, like, if he did his pill, it would be like in some juice, it would be
yeah,
like in the water bottle. So,
yeah,
after me learning more, I'm like, that's what he meant.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, okay. Um, Man, this is a good this is good. This is you giving a lot of good information. So we're gonna close this out and then we're gonna jump back into it, okay? If you don't mind.
Okay. Yep.
All right. Well, that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like to be a guest on our show, or if you would like a DVD copy of our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.